Hey everyone! So today, I don't know what Freedom Walk this is. I'm going to be calling these guys Freedom Walks because I am on the Underground Railroad. This portion is the Underground Railroad. If you guys don't know what the Underground Railroad is, it is the trail that slaves took from the South, southern states. It was just a few southern states in the beginning of America that they would take when they wanted to escape their masters, and they went to states that didn't have slavery laws or where it was safe, and that would either be into the West or into the Canada. And so what would happen is abolitionists would smuggle them out, and so they would take them on these things called the Underground Railroad. And they would sing these hymnals, these church hymnals. That's what Go Down Moses was. It was a church hymnal. And they would sing that because Moses freed the slaves. And the reason they sang that, even though they were from Africa, is because in the Old Testament, it was for the Jews. But then the New Testament talks about Christ. That's why Christ was hung on a cross, is because the New Testament, Jesus came, and the Old Testament talks about, this is just history for you guys, but it's going to be important for this whole thing, because I'm going to talk about the war that's going on right now, the kind of sustainable development, the whole thing, Nazis and everything like that. White nationalism does actually exist, and what's going on, and just so you guys can understand the whole war that's going on, Trump versus the media, and the influencers, and all the anger that's out there, and all the hate, and why everyone's screaming and yelling, and so you can just understand it all, because that's what I've been studying for these last 2 years, and I've finally come to understand it, especially these last 6 months since I made that video in December. I've really come to understand it and finally have a nice, clear picture. And so the Underground Railroad has to do with it. In the Old Testament, New Testament, boy, did I find out that has a lot to do with it. Boy. So the Old Testament was the Jews being freed. They were slaves in Egypt. They were used as slaves. They were at the lower class, and the Egyptians got really, really rich off of them. They didn't do any work, and so Pharaoh didn't want to let them go because their people were so wealthy off of them, off the backs of slaves. That's how all the pyramids were built and things like that. All these huge temples were built on the backs of slaves, and they used the Jews for that slavery and that work. And they got really, really rich. And then Moses freed them or whatever, or God, whoever you want to say. But then the New Testament, Jesus came in. The Jews expected him to be this magnificent, huge military warrior, if that makes sense. So he's supposed to be this big military warrior. And they were expecting a military warrior to save them from the Romans and the Roman emperors and the Roman rulers that were around at the time. They weren't slaves or anything like that, but they felt like they were being taxed and they were being oppressed and everything like that. And so, they came through, and instead they got this guy Jesus saying that he was the Messiah, and a prophet came before and said that he was coming, and said that he was actually the one. And boy, they didn't want that. They wanted a warrior. They wanted one to come, a military guy to come and save them. And here came this guy Jesus saying, not only is salvation available to the Jews, but I came to free all people. God created everyone on the earth, every single human on the earth. We're all created equal, and that's what this is all about. That is why the Bible is the most banned text on this earth. That's why it's not allowed in socialist countries. That's why Christians are burned and the number one persecuted religion on this planet. That's why Trump is holding religious persecution summits at the White House, and they are the first ones ever held at the White House. There never were persecution summits held at the White House, and that's why influencers aren't talking about it. You won't hear Ben Shapiro talk about it. You won't hear Glenn Beck talk about it. You won't hear Pat Roberts talk about it. You won't hear any conservative CPAC, none of them. You won't hear GOP chairwomen talk about it. They will not tell you that religious persecution summits are being held at the White House, or that Christians are the number one persecuted in the world. And the reason that is because throughout history, this stupid text has been going around saying, all humans are created equal. Meanwhile, people who want to get rich the biggest way that you can earn money is by using humans as slaves. I mean, you can go ahead and build crops and mine ore and all that kind of thing, but the greatest way to make money is to own slaves. That is the biggest money earner on earth. That is why when you look at the UN Sustainable Development Plan, when you look at climate change goals at the UN, if you go ahead and look at the climate change conferences that I told you about, when Tom Steyer, who is a billionaire, says, first thing I want to do when I get into office is enact all the climate change goals. And Ben Shapiro just goes, that's stupid. It's not stupid at all. The very first climate change goal number 1, is to eradicate world poverty. Eradicate world poverty by making sure that all people are above the world poverty rate. Well, the world poverty rate is making $1.25 a day. That means hit $1.26 a day and you're out of the world poverty rate. You know what that is? That's $425 a year. Do you know what $425 a year is? That's a labor camp in China. That means the Masanjan labor camp that we saw out in that GoodWorks had, that we saw Epoch Times that I shared with you. Epoch Times did a nice little undercover, which none of the conservatives shared with you, and none of the Democrats shared with you. No one shared with you, and they'll never talk about China labor camps to you, but it's the entire business model of China. And what they do is they run labor camps there, and that's how it's so profitable. That's why you'll never feel the bite of tariffs at all, because their profit margins are so freaking high. And that's why Wall Street's always saying, like, oh, we need to make money, and they want you to worry about their profits, because that's all they think about. And so what they do is, like, for $425 a year, they can keep a guy in chains making diodes in a labor camp at the Masanjan labor camp, in this, what they call a factory, but it's actually a prison. And what they do is they round up Christians all around China, and they round up other practitioners that practice this meditation called Falun Gong. And you know what that meditation is? You know how you get to qualify as a Falun Gong practitioner? If you tell the truth. So basically, if you're a liar, you stay out of prison in China. And that's what they're training our kids to do in school. Anyway, so that's the fight. That's the war that's going on right now. That's why you'll see every conservative. Okay, so like, let me break it down for you. So it's kind of, I'm like, how do I name the war? Like, that's why Christianity, that's why the Bible is so important and so banned. That's why it was smuggled into Germany. Now, why is Germany such a big deal? And why does this all come down to Germany? Well, it turns out I was really right when I talked about George Soros and the Ring of Power. It turns out I was really right about that. George Soros is a Jew, technically, if you go by Democrat standards. Yeah, he's a Jew, but he's not a Jew by German standards. No, Nazi Germany. Nazi Germany had a different definition for Jews. And what defines a Jew and a German? You know that story we heard about George Soros? About how he was cleaning the Jews out. We didn't understand how his family, who was Jewish, could be cleaning Jews out of their homes and taking all of their belongings, and how he could say that was the happiest year of his life, cleaning Jews out of their homes with their belongings and stealing all their riches while he was a Jew. How could he possibly say the same thing and have that be true at the same time? Well, you just have to look into Nazi Germany's Jew laws. Turns out the only way you qualify to be a Jew is if both of your grandparents were full Jewish. Well, that eliminated it down to less than 1% of the population. Who was in the concentration camps? Well, it turns out that like 65% of all homosexuals were rounded up in concentration camps. Intellectuals, journalists, reporters, Christians, lots of Christians, anyone who disagreed with the Nazis. Who were the Nazis? Well, it turns out it wasn't really Hitler. Like, Hitler was their poster boy. But there's a lot of different parties in Germany, just like we have today. We have a lot of different political leaders. How did Hitler end up being the guy? How did he even run for office and win? Well, that comes down to a company known as BASF, the chemical company. And that's really still the fight. They're still going today. Everything online says that they're gone, except that if you look up BASF, they have this nice big green label that says the sustainability company. And they run the climate change agenda for the world. And amazingly enough, Germany doesn't enact any of the climate change laws. So while the rest of us have regulations, they don't. So 0.6% of their population runs manufacturing, but they own 48% of the sales in the entire globe. That's the One Ring, my friends. Soros is a German. That's how he did it. His German roots, or his Jewish roots, go way, way back. Way, way back. His parents weren't. His grandparents weren't full Jewish. Neither were the Rothschilds. Dinesh D'Souza did this amazing movie where he said, wow, the Nazis weren't even racist enough. The Nazis weren't even racist enough to make their laws, to cut off their laws, one drop rule. And I'm like, yeah, they would have put all their donors in the death camps. That's why. That's why. That's why I'm walking this freedom trail. Because I really hope that I walk us out of slavery on this trail where the slaves that came before walked. That's why I'm just so, I can't believe the irony of this. I hope the Rothschilds, if you look at their genealogy, their Jewish roots go back to the 1500s. So Hitler, they just said you have to have full Jewish roots to your grandparents. Everyone who funded him gave him the Rothschild banking factories. Everyone in Frankfurt, they were all Jewish. It's just their Jewish roots went back hundreds of years. They had all been made English lords or German lords, and so everyone says, oh, the Jews escaped. The people who weren't optimists made it to Hollywood. Made it to Hollywood and got nice big mansions with pools. And I'm like, no, the Germans escaped to Hollywood. The Germans escaped to Hollywood. The Germans made it. The Germans got to Hollywood and got a pool. The Germans did. It's the Jews who had too much Jewish blood, and they could say, I just can't believe it. Anti-Semitism is like the biggest freaking profitable model there is. You want to know what the One Ring is? The Rothschilds banking which invested in BASF, the chemical company. You can see it on my feed. I have the thread. You can see it, the pollution thread on bookofkatherine.com. The Rothschild banking family, they're not the only family in Frankfurt, but they funded Hitler. And then the first thing they had Hitler do, I'm sorry if I'm all over the place, there's just so much research. The first thing they had Hitler do was remove the rights of all Germans, not just the Jews. They had them remove the rights of all citizens of Germany. And that's what this all comes down to, is removing the rights of all people. Look into climate change laws, and it's all about, look at LGBT laws. It gives special rights to some people while taking away the rights of others. We had created equal in the Civil Rights Act. Look up the Civil Rights Act and you'll see that it says you cannot discriminate upon race. You cannot discriminate against color. You cannot discriminate against sexual orientation. You cannot discriminate against religion. You cannot discriminate against political orientation. You cannot discriminate against any of those things when you hire somebody. And what do they do today? Today you go into publishing and they say, do I want a good book? No, they say, I am looking for someone with these genitals. I'm looking for someone with these genitals. I'm looking for someone with this skin color. I'm looking for someone with this eye color. They put you up on a slave block as if this trail didn't frickin' happen, as if this never happened in our history. And they put people up on a slave block and they go, bam, bam, bam. Hey, I want someone of this body part. I want someone of this body part. Hey, 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 bada, bada. Hey, bada, bada. Do you want someone of this body part? Do you want someone of this body part? And someone over on this sustainable development side says, hey, I want this kind of person. I want this kind of thing. Do you have a lot of this kind of it? I want a lot of that kind of person. I want a lot of that kind of person. And they just order you up like fries. So I just know. I turn in my book and I'm just like, oh, Maybe my leg is disabled enough for them. Maybe my broken spine is enough for them. It has nothing to do with whether or not my character. I had a dream means nothing when you won't be judged by the color of your skin, but by the character. When a black child and a white child will run together freely. You know what happened to that dream? 75 colleges had segregated graduations. That's the white nationalist Nazi dream of Germany. The one ring of power has been given out. They gave it out. They gave out the German banking families of the Rothschilds, of the Soros family. Alexander Soros is partying it up in New York, saying, I'm a Jew. He's not a Jew. He's a German. David Rothschild out there saying, I'm an adventurer. I'm an adventurer. I'm an environmentalist. No, you own slaves because you turned Starbucks into the plantation of history with coffee beans. $425 a year. And guess what? Did you see what climate change did in Ethiopia? Good job, climate change. You got 350 million trees planted in 12 hours. By force, they went to the leader of Ethiopia. So Ethiopians were forced, not by choice, they were forced. Ethiopians were forced to plant 350 million trees in 12 hours. That is called forced labor and slavery in Africa. And the world celebrated because of two words: climate change. That is called global slavery, and it's happening right under our feet. It's called white nationalism, it's called Nazism, and it is happening under the banner of climate change. Save the planet. Save the planet, and we'll get wealthy. There is a big difference, and the difference is in the Bible. I learned that this last 6 months. I learned that there is only one text in this world. There are a ton of religious texts. There are a ton of religious texts out there, but there is only one text that says everyone has this special thing in us that makes us equal, that all of us are to be treated equally, that all of us are special, and that all of us deserve to be treated differently than a commodity to be traded on the street. Do you understand that? That all of us have something unique in us to be treated differently than being traded on the street, that we are all special. If you look into how America was treated when we were first formed, look at how Pope Pius VI talked about us. They said, how dare that darkness spread and to the other side and say that liberty is deserved for all, breaking the bonds of master and servant. How dare they break that bond and call themselves free and spread that darkness? It is a cancer to the planet. That's what the Pope said. That's what the Catholic Church teaches, and that's why I was a socialist until just this last 6 months, and I didn't know it. And you can bet I've had a really hard time with my friends. Learning what they trade in, because it's the cool thing or it's the smart thing, because all of our culture now teaches everything online. You look at Showtime, you look at Showbiz, and you realize all it is Nazi propaganda. All it is Nazi propaganda, teaching you to think of others as unequal to you. They try to teach you upperclassmen and lowerclassmen that all it is trying to teach you and break you from seeing each other as equal. You see people going out there and they're saying they're Christians and they teach the Bible, and then they talk to the person, they say, you moron, you idiot, you slimeball. Every single conservative Christian out there, you idiot, you slimeball. Other side does the same thing. Democrats, those idiots, those slimeballs. No one has compassion. No one treats the other like a thing. And so people are bleeding all over the world in slavery, and no one cares. No one has a single bone in their body for the human rights travesties that are happening, because it's not anywhere, nowhere. The things of Magnum PI are gone. The things of Miami Vice are gone. Anything catching the criminal is gone. Everything. Someone asked me, they're like, why don't they show any kind of movie saying, be like Aragorn? Why don't they show that anymore? And I was like, don't you understand? They want you to be a sustainable development guru. Let me tell you how it works. They fund Charlie Kirk on one side. And what Charlie Kirk is, he goes around and he says, capitalism, capitalism. Free market capitalism. Do you know what free market capitalism is? Free market capitalism is our 1974 China trade agreement with the human rights removed. We had a human rights agreement in it that said, we will trade with you, China, as long as you treat your people in the factories with human rights condition, because we Americans believe in created equal. We are founded on this thing called the Bible, which says that we have this little special thing in us. According to the Bible, we're created equal. Everyone has this breath of God in us or whatever, or we're a reflection of the Creator or whatever. I haven't really gone into all that. But based on that, we happen to believe that everyone is created equal. And so we want you to treat your people equally when you make products for us. And we had that in the 1974 trade agreement. And guess what happened? Mitch McConnell, Pat Roberts, Dianne Feinstein, Bill Clinton, they went in there in 2000 and they wrote up a bill, one bill, S.2277 on March 23rd, the year 2000. One bill, specific. And the moment I posted it, they wiped that link, but you can bet I downloaded it and posted it again on my website, bookofkatherine.com. Right there in the header, Bill S2277. And what did they do the same year in China? Started rounding up the Falun Gong. Look it up. Falun Gong wiped out in China, and suddenly labor camps were created in China, just like in Nazi Germany. The concentration camps we all know about, Auschwitz, they call it a death camp. Nope. It was actually for BASF, just like China labor camps are for BASF. I'm sorry if I'm going off and giving you too much information, but that's the world today. You have a choice. You get to be a free market capitalist or you get to be a fair trade capitalist. You either want human rights in your trade agreements or you don't. You'll notice that Glenn Beck goes out there now and he says, oh, democracy now, fight for Hong Kong. Fight for Hong Kong. This is why it's good. I get so angry. And then it makes me walk and it makes me pump my arms and it makes me pump my legs and it gets me walking again on a freaking freedom trail. And that's good so that maybe some slaves can be freed in China for once. Because this trade war is only just beginning, I get the feeling. I do not get the feeling China's just about to crumble. That is why the EU is freaking out that they're about to leave Britain because they're figuring out that the slaves in Britain, I shouldn't call them slaves, I should just call them indentured servants or whatever. The lower class in Britain is figuring out that they don't need their regulations anymore, that they lied, that BASF and the bankers in Frankfurt that own all the papers, oh my goodness, they just are figuring out that all of that's fake news, that they're actually out. Legally, they are out and they don't need to listen to any of those regulations. They took that 1974 trade agreement where America had human rights in it, created equal, our Constitution, and they ripped our constitutional amendment out. Our basic human rights out of that trade agreement, and China rounded up all of the Falun Gong practitioners, all of the Christians in China, and they have been persecuting them ever since. And not only that, but that's when they began organ harvesting. Do you understand that? That is exactly when Body Worlds came out. Body Worlds. Gunther. The one that had an exhibit, the one that your kids were forced to go to, that's Nazi programming, that your teachers' unions, your lovely little socialist teachers' unions forced your kids to go and see, that had bullet wounds in the heads. You send your kids to school, you can expect to have a Nazi come home. That's just the way it is. What's a Nazi? A Nazi thinks that one human is less equal than another human. That's all it is. And once they think you are not created equal, once they think one is upper and one is lower, then they think, oh, I'm better than you. I'm better than you. How can I get one up on you? How can I get one up on you? When I do this trade deal, when I make this business move, when I make this partnership, do I need to care about the other citizens of the world, or are they just meat? Is it just my right? Are they the sad little people that should have been there first? Were they just too stupid? Did they just not get on it enough? And the really sad thing is that the ring of power was held out. These bankers gave out money to the GJA. Hardest freaking name to say on purpose. The National Lesbian Gay Journalist Association, the most powerful journalist lobby on the planet. And Rothschilds and Soros came a calling and said, we got this money for you. We'll build up your lobby. Ignore the fact that our history of socialism has killed more gays than any other movement on the planet. Ignore the fact that we've thrown them into concentration camps. We've got money. And you know what happened? All of those homosexuals and all of those gays and all of those queens that they lovely call themselves because they went ahead and did what the Nazis said to do. Label yourself what evil calls you. So they proudly wear shirts that says queen on it. So smart. Claim their name for you. Did you know the Nazis handed out pink labels? Thank you, Crowder, for that one. The Nazis handed out pink badges, just like Islam handed out badges for the Jews to wear and the Christians to wear. And if you think Middle East is on its own, no, that's just one Germany picked up. Germany just went over to Syria in the 1850s, bought up all the land. The Middle East is just an extension. That's just an extension of Germany. That's why Iran, that's why the transnational companies will not stop trading with Iran and did the Iran deal. Yep, that's why the Ottoman Empire was linked with Germany in World War I and linked with Germany in World War II. They're not separate. They are Germany. They are Germany. And the reason Sharia came up, the reason Sharia became this big thing, is because the Rothschilds are so freaking smart. They figured out it's the most amazing book of control. Look into the history of Muhammad. Wasn't even certainly a real warrior. Wasn't even a real text. It's just a great book of control. Great book of control. And so they use it as a method of control. But the land itself, is it owned by the Middle East? Is it? No, ring of power. The ring of power, they go out and they hand out money, and people who are greedy, they take it, and they never think for 1 second that they'll get sold underneath the road. But you're already seeing it. You're already seeing celebrities who sold out in the 90s and sold out in the 2000s. They're being railroaded now, aren't they? They're being sold under the stream, and they're just floating on by you, dead bodies in the water. Because just like it says in Lord of the Rings, the eye of evil does not share power. These families, these royal families, these slave traders of the globe that have been around for centuries, they don't share power. They will give you money. They will give you power. They will tell you stories of wealth. They will go to these sustainable development conferences and they will tell your students that they are better, that they are smarter, that they have what it takes to rule the world. And your students will go because they have been trained on Netflix, on Showtunes, on Amazon by all of the world leaders. And they've listened to Charlie Kirk and they think that capitalism is the best thing. They don't know capitalism is in every freaking socialist country around the globe. And they don't know plantation fields, and when they trade corn on Wall Street, they're actually trading slaves. They have no idea about that. They have no clue. They aren't shown it. That's why there's a firewall around America, just like there's a firewall around China. That's why they only talk about Venezuela, because Venezuela is about to die. That's why they only show Venezuela. Yep. All it's Venezuela is about mining. There are no slaves still. All the mines are underneath the ground, so there's nothing to show there. Notice they don't show you anything about the plantations down in Chile. They don't show you the plantations down in Colombia. Oh, no. They don't show you any of those. Nope, they don't show you the field workers, the field hands. Nope. And so when Andrew Wang comes along and he promises you $1,000 a year, don't you know what that is? That's sustainable development come knocking at your door. And I'm like, I told you it was going to go down. I told you it was going to go down, and you didn't believe me until I showed you that they already had a written promise out there for 30 years that said this is our goal. Our goal is to lower it to $425 a year. That's their goal. And you say, what's the answer to that? Well, the freaking answer is another Jew. The first Jewish family ever in the White House. Modi of India, Mr. Anti-Semite Modi, who they even tricked. They love tricking people. They even tricked Mr. what's his name, Bannon, Steve Bannon, into thinking he's the greatest democratic president of the world and India's really coming back. No, they're just investing in sustainable development in India because they've gone through China. They've wiped through all the people there. They've broken the back of every Chinese slave there. And now they're like, hey, let's go ahead and do India. They found Modi, who was like, oh, so charming. Did you notice that Modi wouldn't touch the hand of the president? Because the president is the first Jewish president ever. He wouldn't even touch the hand. He wouldn't even shake the hand of the president. That is why you have to watch these world leaders at these world summits. That's where the serious crap goes down. That's how you find stuff. That's how I found about Poland. That's how I found Poland's connections. And Poland's connections with sustainable development and Poland's connections with Iran. Is there hope? Is there success? Yes. Listen, with Nazism and IG Farben and their history, the most money to be made is with fair trade. That's how everybody gets wealthy. The most money is to be made is when the whole world is trading and making money and eating meat and living longer. If you live longer, you make more money, you earn more, and you spend more. The Nazis just want to burn through it and own the world and then just kill us all off. They're Nazis. Like, I don't see how people don't see that organ harvesting is a worse death camp than freaking the Holocaust. And no one cares. You know why no one cares? Because no one reads the Bible anymore. No one reads the Bible. They read Amazon and they read the New York Times. They consume what they hate. They hate it and they consume it, and they're scared to read the Bible. And the Bible's the only thing out there preaching anything about anti-slavery. It's the only anti-slavery thing out there. And you know what I've learned about the Bible? I've learned it's the thing that gives you the least rules of all. Garden of Eden, one rule. Communism, let's see how many rules in communism I've broken already. And don't tell me it's just on the left. How many rules does churches give you? I can't even begin to give you the list of rules that churches give you. They went out, the Nazis went out and printed a new international version of the Bible. And that Bible is Narcissism R Us. That's when the church started all of a sudden only feeling like they had to give money overseas, and all the money goes to the Middle East, amazingly enough, which then filters right back into Germany. Amazing how they do it all. I don't know if any of this is making sense. I hope I'm giving you a global picture that somewhat makes sense, but fair trade makes people so much more money. And the fact of the matter is that our sanctions, the reason that there's hope, there's two reasons that there's hope. There's hope. Numero uno. The human heart yearns to be free. The human heart yearns to be free. You know where I read that? I read that in a book called Grace Awakening. You know what's on the cover of that book? A rose. That's another little coincidence that I'm not taking for granted. First line, the human heart yearns to be free. Every human heart yearns to be free. Do you know why people take the money of sustainable development? Because they've made them so poor by emptying out America with that lovely trade agreement that not only made labor camps over in China, but emptied out the heart of manufacturing. Manufacturing all moved over there because there were labor camps over there now. Super cheap labor. If they had not done that, America wouldn't have been carved out. Lies of saying, oh, we hoped it was going to be more democratic, putting things like the 100-year marathon on Mark Levin's show, big freaking liars. I feel like the only person telling the truth out there is Victor Davis Hanson, for heaven's sakes. And I know Dinesh D'Souza is like trying to tell the truth sometimes. I don't know. It's hard to tell. Like, there are people out there who try to do good, but then they get, I don't know why they don't talk about China. I don't know if they're paid not to. I guess that's the thing, is that I'm like, no, you took the money. You took the money, and then with the money, you took the censorship rules that came with it. Is it worth it to get the truth out? Is it worth it to get the truth out? I don't know. When I get a job out there, will I go ahead and censor myself? I guess I will. I censor myself when I teach dance classes. You can bet the heck yes I censor myself. I don't sit there and go, hey, have you heard about IG Farben? Did you know it was actually Volkswagen? Did you know that was actually Volkswagen? And Krupp, you know that coffee maker that's in your house? Did you know Krupp was the one that actually funded the Hitler Nazi concentration camps and gassed them all to death? Did you know that? No, I don't say that. So I don't know. I mean, it's good. Like, without his research, I wouldn't have gotten it. Like, it's hard. It's hard out there today. But if we don't start doing flyers. And this is the other thing I want to say, with all this information that I'm giving you, please, like, I have friends, like, this is what I mean. It's been hard with my friends, but also, like, I've been like, go see the plantations that you own and this amazing money you're making. Like, it's time to go take a visit. Because they're like, well, what do you mean fair trade versus free trade? Like, fair trade versus free trade. And I'm like, do you not know the Bill of Rights? That's the difference. Because of the Bible, we created the Bill of Rights. America is the only country in the world with the Bill of Rights. That's what we have. We have the Bill of Rights, and that's why Nazis hate us so much. When Germany got Hitler, funded with millions of dollars by BASF and the Rothschild and the Soros banking families, all the banking families of Britain, Great Britain, and all that stuff, all of these banking families of Frankfurt, they funded Hitler's campaign, and the first thing he did was remove all the rights of the Germans so that they could be slave laborers. And then they just went through all the other countrysides and rounded up the slave and just made slave labor companies. And all these companies came through. And by the way, for the record, none of it would have worked if not one bank, only one bank was willing to do it. It had never been done before in history. But one bank was willing to actually trade that money, because America is literally the piggy bank of the world. We're the biggest economy, and none of those goods could have been sold in America. None of those goods ever would have made it to America if Chase Bank hadn't transferred those monies into dollars. And I'm like, you got to move your money into a local bank. That's why the Nazis and the Frankfurt banks have been buying up the smaller banks. You've been seeing all those. They've been putting all these board members, and then the board members get onto these smaller banks, and then they bring accusations that they're not running the bank correctly. And there's been all these little takedowns of these little banks. That's them consolidating, because they know you're moving into smaller banks and they want to round up your money. That's the consolidating, that IPO thing that I did. I did this thing of consolidation, this web of all this money. And I'm just like, get your money out. I don't care if you have to put it underneath your mattress, for heaven's sakes. And that's the other thing. Like, this is a really big thing. The slave trade, not just the slave trade, but the land before America. The reason the Pope hated it and the reason the kings hated it and everything is because before those times, before the Bill of Rights, the way things worked was kings owned us. They owned the land, and then we had to pay taxes to the king. It was literally like the time of Robin Hood. When we saw the Robin Hood, that's why I said watch that cartoon Robin Hood that Disney made. You really got to see that cartoon and see what times were like. It's just like that now. Every climate change action is a tax. They're even making the new gun reform law. Every gun reform law you see, every single one was written by a climate change committee. And by the way, if you go to Berlin, go ahead and look up. There's a bunch of UN meetings happening in Berlin, in Germany. Like every week, there's like 4 meetings going on in Germany. All the activities going on in Germany. It's all happening in Berlin and Germany and all of Hitler's old buildings. That's where all the activity, and they don't post that on the UN climate change site. No, and that's where September 23rd, they're taking all of the science projects that your university students have been making for them all around the globe, and they're handing them over to the top 100, and they're handing them over to the German manufacturing sector. That's what's happening in Germany on September 23rd. Yep. Way to go. Do you know how that usually works? Usually students go and make their own company, or they hand it to a private investment, just like on Shark Tank. They go and they hand it. That's why they do Shark Tank. So it gets kids excited that when someone comes along and say, I'm going to offer you a lot of money, we're a transnational bank. We're a transnational union. You're going to save the planet with our thing. And kids get all excited. They're like, oh, Shark Tank, we're going to do it. And they're swimming with the sharks. They're like, oh, we're swimming with the sharks. And then they get bit. Or these kids make money and they're living on some private island. Problem is that these guys know where they live, and they disappear because they think they're better than their parents. They think they're better than their families. But the problem is they know their secret. And that's when car accidents happen. You know how we know all that? Because 007, those guys actually did something with their ability. You know, the Nazis really learned something. One of the reasons they're actually pillaging our wealth and pillaging America's wealth and knocking out our middle class and our lower class and even our upper class of all their wealth and conservatives of all their wealth. You know why they're doing that? Because it was a wealthy, wealthy son. It was a billionaire son who actually beat World War II. It was a lumberjack son who was working in the Treasury Department because he went to work for government. That's why all the conservatives say don't work for government, because you might see what they're doing in government and you might actually blow the whistle on them. That's what stopped the Nazis back in World War II. The only thing that stopped the Nazis back in World War II was J.E. Dubois, Josiah Dubois. And he was a lumberjack billionaire's son. He was a conservative. He went in there and he saw what Roosevelt was doing. He saw the anti-Semitism in the Nazis and he said, I'm going to go to the papers. And because he was a billionaire, it was going to work. He had the evidence. He had the papers. He said, I'm going to go call. And he was like the Donald Trump of the time. And they learned. And they shut down all our lumbering first. That's the first thing they took out in the 90s was all of our lumber companies. First thing that went down with the climate change regulations. That's when all the forest fires started happening. Didn't you notice? It's the first thing that went up in California. I watched my entire forest range burn year after year. Went up in smoke. No lumberjacks to pay off. And then all the kids came through and said, don't work for your government, so you can't whistleblow. Don't you dare come work and see what's happening with it. Don't you dare come and see the deals that Mitt Romney's making. Don't you dare come and see the deals that Lindsey Graham's making or Mitch McConnell's making. Don't you dare come and see that we're all on the same side and that we're all Nazis. Don't you dare see what PwC is doing. Don't you dare see that Simmons is getting all the contracts in America and was being sold off just like Hillary Clinton did. By the way, I just want to say that this area, the reason why I ran when I had I'm switching tactics here, but when I ran with my episode, the reason I ran out of the trail is because there's houses out here. I wanted people to be able to see me, like, if it got really bad. So that's part of the reason I didn't worried. I said I knew my husband was coming home, but I was also running out into the open so that houses could see me, if that makes sense. There's a road right there. There's an open road and houses. So I was way more, I realized you couldn't see that. Like, that's why I was so calm and like dragging myself or whatever. And that's why I said I have no shame. I didn't have any shame like dragging myself in front of houses. Like, I had no shame doing that. So but that's why I was running out into the open. I wanted to make sure that I was visible to my neighbors and stuff. So, and I have no shame about that. I wanted to get to safety or whatever and be out of the trail, if that makes sense. So I was thinking I did go late night dancing in LA in the inner city. You know what I mean? Like, and I work the inner city. I mean, I do have some kind of smarts somewhat in my head, even through the pain. I guess it's coming back. Thank goodness. I was somewhat aware. Anyway, so I hope that helps. But when it comes to the fight, there is hope because of two things. Number one, Trump is really going out there and restoring a lot of rights, and nations want to be free. They don't want to be underneath this sustainability debt trap. Number two, the sanctions are working, and this banking empire is getting really, really weak. They're trying to hold on, but that's why they're kind of getting desperate and making moves. Like, that's why all of a sudden Parliament, like, voted early out of the blue. Like, they voted early instead of October. They're scared. They were trying to intimidate the public. That's fear. They're getting desperate. They're making a lot of desperate moves all of a sudden. That means they're scared. China is about to crumble. Their economy is crumbling. They've been doing a lot of I've been sharing that online. They've been pumping the numbers. Like, I've been showing Wall Street how they've been pumping the numbers with cement. When you see those big cement cities, like when you see it on 007 and you see those abandoned cities, no one ever lived in those cities. That's cement that they used when Wall Streeters look at cement numbers to think that there's an economy happening. There's actually not an economy happening. They just kept building cement to make it look like buildings were happening. No one actually lives in those buildings. Everyone's actually just poor or in poverty or whatever. And China Uncensored, that's why I say watch China Uncensored, especially if you're a trader. They actually got the real energy numbers, and it's actually like a third. It's actually the energy spending in China is about 35% of the numbers they're putting out, and that the World Trade or the World Bank is putting out and stuff like that. Like, the World Bank is the UN. And so that's why I say, like, you should really be paid, like China Uncensored, like, they do put out really good stuff that's helpful for trading and things like that. So they really are crippling, getting weak and stuff like that. There is hope out there, and fair trade does win. And these guys at the top, like, they don't care. They're getting wealthy. They're getting desperate, but they're getting wealthy. And the very final thing that I want to say is that read the Bible. I mean, even you don't have to like believe or anything like that. Putting your faith into someone like Jesus and believing that he exists, and then putting your faith and like trusting and everything like that, that's one thing. But you need to get to know that Bible to know about created equal and about rights. They don't allow it in socialist countries. It's the biggest banned book. You should always go towards what they don't want you to see. Remember, I used to say on my Twitter feed, like, I found all this because I said, like, go where the deletions are. Remember I used to say that? I was like, oh, they deleted, go towards it. Like, go where the deletions are. And we'd find all this cool stuff. Like, when we went where the deletions are, for example, this bill, S.227 in the year 2000, That was the big one, right? They really freaked out when we found that. That's why all of a sudden Tom Steyer is doing a climate change town hall. He wants to say climate change is a Democrat thing, not a Republican thing. When it was, I just revealed McConnell is actually a Democrat and he's a Republican. He's the Senate Majority Leader for Republicans. When he's actually a Democrat and actually headed up the human rights removal from our Constitution, our trading agreement that actually cleared out all of our manufacturing. And that's why he blocks Trump and does open borders and the entire Nazi agenda for German manufacturing that benefits German manufacturing. All right, I feel like I'm going in circles, and I'm sure I didn't get all of my research out there. But that's why this freedom trail matters, and that's why we're on our freedom from slavery. And the only text out there that fights slavery, the only reason why these people who traveled saying, "Go down, Moses," take a page from their book. The abolitionists read the Bible like crazy. Abraham Lincoln read the Bible like crazy. And the Bible version I recommend is the NASB. I need to correct that on my website. But the NASB of 1995, the New American Standard Version, that is the one. I think it was Charles Sturgeon or something like that. They saw what was happening with UN 21, which is the same thing, the Nazi agenda in the Germany or whatever. It's the same thing as UN. It's exact climate change. It's all the same thing as Agenda 21. It's all the same thing, Agenda 21. That's why people have channels that are like the agenda, and then they totally say America's dying. America's not dying. Like Trump is totally saving it, but we really need to elect people who do not. We need to elect old people. This is really important. We need to elect old people who were taught the Constitution. The young people were taught that the Holocaust doesn't exist. They were raised on UNESCO. UNESCO is the UN German agenda, and that was put into schools. I saw it. I was a teacher in the schools at that time, and they replaced our entire Constitution, our entire curriculum. They completely replaced it with something called peace builders. Well, peace is what China says. China literally went to the UN and said to the Hong Kong student protesters, they said, you know, your so-called freedom to assemble and your so-called freedom of speech is not worth it at the cost of peace. They say rights are not worth it at the cost of peace. Communism has killed. Communism is death, and there is no more peaceful place than a cemetery. They taught death. Nazism is death. Peace is death. Freedom and liberty is life, and the only place you're going to find that is the Bible and not in school, where they tell you you can't speak unless you're being told you can by an authority. You get that? That's why we all apologize when we speak our minds, because we had to raise our hand. Frickin' throw that crap out of the water. All right, I love you so much. I hope that helped, and I need to be able to have the strength to get up that hill. That's my longest walk yet, but I think that it was the most important one yet. Freedom Walk. That's why these are called Freedom Walks, because they're the only piece of truth out there. And remember, don't say this stuff online, because I have the protection. I have the really, really cool hackers. I got really cool connections, so I've got the hackers who will protect me. Right? I've got really cool setups that I'm protected. You guys need to do it by flyers, put it up on your community boards as climate action, and do word association, like Climate Action Now, COP25, and then attach open borders, migration. Everyone hates that stuff, but attach to climate change that it's open borders, that it's migration, that it's all the stuff like free abortions, free women's health care, all the things that they're doing under Agenda 21, like renewable energy, China trade agreement, like the whole 9 yards, like trade with India, you know, like all of it. You have to put all the agenda that they have. You can look it up and find out what it is. I have artwork and stuff. You can do advanced Twitter search on my thing. But don't just look at what they have, like poverty, or just say $425 a year or whatever and stuff like that. So, but yeah, they need to know that climate change actually has a government. Just be like, get involved in the climate change government meeting at the UN this time and these dates, and put all the dates. And we have to start doing word association so that people know that climate change isn't just an idea. It actually has a government and a lobbying group. That's all it really is that all the lobbying groups that used to work in DC got together at the UN, and they create bills at the UN. They create bills at these UN climate change things, and then they give them to Congress. That's why I call our Congress a couch cushion Congress. Our Congress is a couch cushion Congress. They sit on their couches. They take vacations all summer. They tweet like they're working. They don't. Meanwhile, all of the lobbyists go off to all these gorgeous Fiji vacations, Chile, and all these things, and they make bills for our Congress. And then our Congress, Senator Warren, Bernie Sanders, Mitch McConnell, and Pat Roberts, and everything. They stretch, and Josh Hawley, and they come back in and they say, do you have our bill? And they go, here's your bill. BASF and the Nazis hand them their bill. Germany, Berlin says, we got all the science ideas, we got everything we have together, here it is, and we're going to call it a gun reform bill. And they're like, thank you very much, and they go vote. And that's how our Congress works today. We need to vote them out. No more lawyers, no more sustainability partners, no more climate change. We need voting guys who hate climate change agenda and swear it off. And that takes very, very, very brave people, and that's okay. And do not sign up until the very last day. Do not tell anyone you are doing it. Get to know the community. That is we have to be like them. So here's what you do, is that you start a business in your town, or you start getting to know, goes to town halls and stuff, and just start chatting with people. Start becoming the person everyone loves in your town. Just start getting to know people. Start meeting them, start getting to know, become a name known in your town. Don't tell anyone you're running. Just start going and meeting people. Just start saying, I want to say it. Go to your town halls, go to your city council meetings or whatever. Start talking to people, chat up to people, say you want to get to know more about this, and just say, I'm so much interested. What is this? And what does this do? And what does this do? And that's so interesting. And that's so interesting. And talk to business people. Like, go around to the businesses and shop, but while you're shopping, talk to the business owner and see how long they've been in business and ask how business is going. And what happens is you get to know everybody, and then they'll know you when you finally run. And then you come back later, a few months later, and you hand them a flyer and say, I decided to run. I like you guys so much. And then they can't do anything to you. They can't sue you or anything like that because you're in. Aren't I smart? This is why my friends love me so much. That's why they love me so much. That's why I have so many good friends. That's why I have so many high up friends, because, I make them good business deals. Except that, then I find out they're doing this, and then I try to show them why it's not a good deal, and that's what we're going through now. So we're all going through it today, finding out, how coffee beans are made. So I love you guys so much. That's an interesting thread. If you guys ever find that research that I did a long time ago. I'm starting to shake. All right, better go. Bye. Oh, please donate down below. Please donate. I really want to be able to walk more often, and I need to afford these. Some of these guys aren't covered by insurance, obviously. All right, love you. Bye.